recording. Here we go. So for everyone today we will be speaking about change management, tactics, strategies. I call them the leaves that together compose the trees that together enable us have the woods of knowledge of change management that are relevant to any discipline, but specific to us as knowledge managers. And I'm so glad to have Mary Lynn speak with us today. Mary Lynn Mans. She and Linda Rising have written two books, Fearless Change and More Fearless Change. So now for the recording, Mary Lynn, you may start.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. And yes, I did start my career in knowledge management, and I will explain how that led me to what I actually am talking about today. And I wanted to start with a story. I know our previous speaker 2 weeks ago said, when you're telling a story, don't start by telling them you're telling a story. But this is kind of an unusual one, but it has a point. So stick with me on this story. So what Moria didn't mention, because I didn't give her this information, is that I am also what's called a Silver Sneakers certified cardio dance instructor. And why is that a big deal? Well, because it was something that I worked for many, many years. And so I was around with a bunch of friends, and we were talking about things, and I just happened to mention this, that I was very proud that I received my certification in this. And one of the women said, "Oh, I work with seniors, and I am always trying to get them to exercise and do more. And many of them don't feel that they have the energy or the will or the stamina or the ability to exercise. Tell me your story." And I told them my story is how I tried many, 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 many different exercises. When I was in my 40s, I started realizing, oh my gosh, really got to get this body into shape. I've got to get serious. But I couldn't find anything. I tried and tried different things and would fail and would give up. And then finally, my daughter took me to a dance class. And I loved it so much that I kept working on routines, working on it, and finally got certified. Well, another person sitting in this group said, "Oh, this reminds me of somebody named Michael in our neighborhood who decided that he needed to get serious about exercise. So he got out and he started walking a little bit. And then the next day, a little bit more. And the next day, a little bit more. And she sees him almost every morning passing by her house. In fact, he now walks 6 miles every day, and he just got a certificate from the neighborhood because 365 days now for a year he has walked 6 miles. And another person told a story of an 81-year-old woman who's in her gym. And the 81-year-old woman has had a lot of, well, first of all, this 81-year-old woman is a really good mover and shaker and leaves a lot of the other younger folks in the dust when she's there exercising. And she has had a lot of body parts replaced and fixed. And every time she has something replaced and fixed, she just starts all over again, really slow. And then another person told a story about a woman in her gym who had a stroke and thought, I'll never be able to get back to the gym. But she did. And she's in the corner just doing her own thing because she can't keep up with the rest of the people, but she just does her own thing in the classes at the gym. So we all said, you know what? There's some patterns here. There's us within all these stories. What they see, first of all, there's a problem that has been brought in. Remember, one of the women said she has a problem in her work trying to get older folks to be able to move and believe they can and do things to help them get healthier. And we said, well, here's some 4 stories that seem to have an answer. And we, after much discussion, we decided the answer was, find something you like and start slow. And so we named that pattern Silver Fox because we decided, yeah, you can become a silver fox if you do this. And then another woman who's younger said, you know, that can apply to anyone. Even if you are 15 years old, you should find something you like and start small. Now, then we started discussing all the implementation of that. Like you have to be very careful and listen to your body, especially if you're older, but even if you're younger, you don't want to get injured and then you can't do anything. And we also looked at some of the negative consequences of this, that you could get so excited about what you're doing that you could do too much and get injured quickly. And so we realized that this was a pattern that came out of stories. And we called that pattern, as I said, Silver Fox. And then when we realized people could use this at any age, we named the pattern You Do You. And you might say, well, wait a minute, this is common knowledge. When you're starting to exercise, you find what you like and you start small and you build on that. But really, how many people do that on a regular basis, right? And so I heard somebody say once recently, common sense is so uncommon. So that's what patterns, how they're developed. They are developed from a collection of stories. So I told you that story of the collection of stories to give you an example of patterns, which is something I'm going to talk about today. So please feel free to interrupt me anytime. I'm going to share my screen and we're going to just jump right into it. All right, so my name is Mary Lynn Manns, and I'm from the USA. Okay, it's being recorded. My screen is not working for some reason. Let's try that again. So sorry. We tested this.
We see the screen. We saw it also when you showed it the previous time. If the cursor is not in the right place, it won't work. It won't move. Now it's on the right place. Now if you click on it, it will move on.
Okay. Well, that's odd. Thank you. Thank you very much. I got worried there for a minute.
So many hours with Zoom.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. So when I started my career in knowledge management, I was very young. And I had these two questions. First was, how do we capture and format knowledge? So this was, to give you an idea, this was back in the 1990s, maybe before some of you were alive. And the second question I had is, how can we use that knowledge to address the problems that we have? Basic knowledge management questions. So I'm going to discuss those two things in the context of patterns, and that's why I told you that story. So, spoiler alert, we can capture the knowledge in the form of patterns, and we can then use that knowledge in a method that I refer to as the fearless change game. So I'll talk about both of those. All right, so here's the next 55 minutes of your life. We're going to talk about patterns as a way of capturing knowledge. And we're going to talk about the fearless change patterns. And we're going to talk about the fearless change game. Now, I'm stealing from something that Moria said last week about creating a bridge from knowledge management to business impact. That's what this fearless change game allows you to do. So we'll get to it. All right, so what I'd like to ask you to do is write in the chat, in what domain do you work and capture knowledge or want to capture knowledge? So let's look at the kinds of people that are here. Now, you all know each other. I do not know all of you. So in what area do you work and try to capture knowledge? If you could just put it in the chat, then I'll get to see some of these. Or is it, are we work? Oh, there we go. Architecture, nuclear waste disposal, humanitarian response, development, investment, higher education, membership services, chemicals and waste management, aviation business. All of these areas, if you're looking for a way to capture knowledge in these areas, you can use something called patterns. You may like what I have to say today and want to learn more, or you may just want to use whatever you're doing now. But this is what really got me excited when I was working in knowledge management, and I discovered patterns as a way of capturing knowledge. So let's get into that. All right, as Moria said, these are the two books that I've written, and this information comes from those two books. And these books were created from interviewing leaders of change, listening to stories from leaders of change. Linda Rising and I interviewed a lot of people and traveled a lot doing it in many different countries, in many different kinds of organizations, large and small. We worked in for-profit or not-for-profit, all different kinds of people. Oh, and the leaders were very young. Some of them were in 19, 20 years old, and not so young, middle-aged managers, all different kinds of people, all different kinds of ages, all different places in their careers. What we documented is the strategies that we heard in the stories. So again, that's why I told you the stories of the silver fox or the you do you. It was a collection of stories. So when we would hear perhaps some manager saying something about that they're doing and leading change in Argentina, and then we hear that same strategy or tactic about some young person who's doing community work in New York, and then we hear it again from somebody who's doing work in Japan, and we say, wait a minute, we've now heard that 3 times. Perhaps there's a pattern there. So that's what we documented. We documented things, tactics that we heard over and over and over again in all of the stories. Now, each pattern is a tool. It has a context, a problem, a solution, consequences, both positive and negative consequences. So when I told the story of the silver fox, which I then changed the name to You Do You, I also talked about the negative consequences. You can get so excited about what you're doing that you could get injured. And the known uses. So I'll give you a website where you can look at an example, but you can also find the examples here, but I'll give you some. So the individual patterns are named so that you can have a language among team members. So it was very exciting the first time I went to an organization and I heard them using the Fearless Change patterns, and they were actually talking about projects in change and using words such as, oh, we need to bring in a big jolt. Oh, we need to talk to that early adopter. Oh, we need to give people a wake-up call. Oh, we need to do a myth buster. And I was like, oh, isn't that cool? They're actually using the language. And some people told me too, they use the language in the reports they would write because the pattern contains so much information, they just have to use the name. So patterns are developed through experiences. Just like the example I started with, those stories, the 4 experiences of the 4 people. So for example, we have a pattern called wake up call. And when Linda and I were interviewing leaders of change, we heard people tell stories like this. One of the first people we talked to was trying to get a new process through her organization. And so she was at this group with this group of people who were going to make the decision makers. And she's explaining, this is what we need to do, and this is what will happen if we do it. And she's sinking. She's just totally sinking. They're not buying it, and she could look at the body language, she could look at their faces and go, oh my gosh, I'm dying here. Well, luckily, somebody that was listening said, one of the decision makers, seemed to be on her side and said, look, Susan has an idea here. And what we're doing now is not working. And what we're doing now is not working because of this, and this. Let's at least try what Susan is suggesting. And people were there, oh my gosh, I didn't know that we had these problems. So Susan gave people, Diane gave people a wake-up call. She gave people a wake-up call. And she also suggested a trial run. She said, let's just try what Susan is saying. Let's just try. And so they agreed because they didn't realize that they had a problem. So you can see an example of this wake-up call pattern on the Fearless Change Patterns website. So I'll leave that for you to do at another time. Another example is actually, I'm going to give Maria credit for this one. So when we were discussing things with people, they would say, our leaders of change, well, one of the problems we have is getting people to help us. And so, but one of the strategies we use is we ask them ahead of time, way ahead of time. And then they are going, oh, that's in the future. Sure, I'll have time in the future. Well, that's what Moria did with me. She is so organized that she asked me months ahead of time. And at the moment, I was filled with things to do and I was completely stressed. But I went, wait, this is not until April. So I agreed. So when Moria asked me for help, and when you ask for help of people when you're leading change, think about the possibility that you can offer them a future commitment. Because people will look at the future and not be able to picture it. And they'll think, I'll have a lot more time then. So these are two other examples of patterns. Asking for help and future commitment. And by the way, everything that's in blue on my slides is a pattern. And ask for help is a really interesting pattern because Linda and I interviewed a lot of people who said their stories were, I did this, and I did that, and I did this. And then their end of their story was, yeah, and then it failed. And it was more like, one time we walked out of an office and Linda said, I felt like I wanted to sing that song, To Dream the Impossible Dream, if you know that song. It's my favorite song. Because these people were saying, I. They weren't asking for help. There's different types of people that you can ask for help from. And these different types of people you can read more about at fearlesschangepatterns.com are early adopters, connectors, gurus. So check out those different types of people you can ask for help from. Now, patterns fit into what Moria was talking about last week, the Kotter change model and the different change models. Fearless change patterns provide the how, the tactics, the how we do things. So how do we create a sense of urgency? I just gave you an example of the wake-up call pattern, and I just summarized it for you. There's a lot more information on that. Creating a guiding coalition. There's a pattern called group identity that I'll talk about later. Early adopter, I mentioned that one. Develop a vision, evolving vision. We'll talk about that. Time for reflection. You'll see that on my slides. Communicate for buy-in. There's something called persistent PR, and PR stands for public relations. Elevator pitch. Trial run, emotional connection, baby steps. So there's a lot of patterns. There's 61 of them. And this is just some examples how it fits into one of the models for change. Here's another example. We also talked about the ADKAR model last week, and I'm guessing most of you are familiar with it. So here's how those tactics, the how we do these things, fit into these models. And I'm going to give you a model called the Fearless Change Game towards the end of this presentation. So there's different kinds of patterns, and you could use patterns for all those areas that you put into the chat. Interestingly enough, patterns started in the 1970s from a gentleman named Christopher Alexander who wanted to capture knowledge for building good buildings. So he traveled around Europe and looked at all the things that make buildings beautiful. So, for example, one of the patterns that he has is light on three sides. He discovered that rooms that are the most pleasant have light on at least three sides, maybe two windows and a lamp. That's one I use a lot. There's one for managers, patterns for managing, patterns for doing presentations, patterns for creating music, patterns for building AI agents. And here's one of my favorites. I was an early review on this, patterns for creating games. And they asked me to be a reviewer. I said, I don't even play online games. And they said, oh, no, read it anyway. And it was amazing because it was put in patterns. I was able to understand how these tactics work. So that's just some examples of the variety of places you can see patterns. Now, what I do are patterns for change. And this is an area in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm going to be traveling there on Friday. There's a bunch of lanes and there's a bunch of signs. I hate this place because you have to decide quickly what to do, what lane to get into. Oh my gosh. And again, that's what these patterns, when you learn them, are good for. You're working on a change project, something is happening. What pattern should I use? What should I use now? These specific tactics. So how can you use the fearless change patterns to help you lead change? So here's an example of Allison and Edward. And Allison is talking about effective knowledge management, enabling organizations and the individuals within and between to take actions, Good stuff. Great job, Allison. She needs to start with that. And Edward, knowledge management refers to the ongoing process, etc., etc. Good job. Well stated. I cited this stuff. So good. They did a good job. But here's what happens when you stop there, when you just talk about the facts. So you might think that when you have this great thing to say, you get this kind of reaction. The person sees the light and goes, yes, knowledge management is great. But really what's happening is this sort of thing. So you need to start with information, a well put together description of what knowledge management is and how it can be useful in the organization. But when you stop there, you hear more of this, you see more of this bird action. Talk. So you need to get past that just giving information stage. And that's what we're going to talk about. So when you give people information, you have some of them who respond, yeah, all right, cool. But often you get this kind of thing. Don't give me another thing to do. Or, what are you talking about? No way, that won't work here. No, I don't think so. Get real. Ugh, come on, just that talk of that gives me a headache. Oh, yawn, I've heard stuff like this before, whatever. Or here's one of my favorites. Yeah, I'm listening to you, but I don't really care, face. And then, of course, the face again. Are you kidding? That'll never work. So these people are all hearing the same thing, but they're all reacting differently. There must be something else going on here. So when you persuade people, you may use facts. Good place to start. Allison and Edward did a great job. Or you may use fear. So the wake-up call. If you don't exercise, you're going to this and this and this is going to happen, right? The problem with too much fear is that people then compartmentalize it. They don't want to hear somebody talking about all the awful things that might happen. They just go, whoa, I'm avoiding that person. They're always talking in the negative. So fear works very well, that wake-up call for the short term. but not in the long term. You don't want to keep using fear to try to persuade people. Force. Well, we all know force doesn't really work. That doesn't get buy-in. It's great on the battlefield when you need to say, this is what we're going to do now. But we really want to get buy-in from people. That's when things work well. So I'm going to give you another F word. An F word, feelings. Now don't go away because you're going to think, oh gosh, this woman's going to talk about feelings. I don't want to hear this. Now here's the context. Connect with how people are feeling about knowledge management. So what Allison and Edward were doing is they're trying to get people to think about it, to cognitively understand it. But then people have different reactions to it, and those reactions are very individual and often illogical. That's what you have to tap into. So some of you may have been Star Trek fans, in that this is a show in the United States from the 1980s. It's still very popular now. And this is Mr. Spock. And he was a Vulcan and half human. But his Vulcan stuff would always come out. And he was extremely logical. And he would drive people crazy. And it was a silly thing to watch because nobody's like that. Always logical. Always logical. We were built with emotions and feelings. We're human. So let's talk about how we can address those feelings inside people that are often illogical and often ambush our efforts. So emotional connection is a pattern. Make a connection emotionally. And here's some reasons you should do this. You want to help people care about the information. So what Allison and Edward were saying was very good. But there were people that were just not caring about it. So you want to get people to care about the information. This is what gets people moving. Yeah, Allison and Edward, I'm listening to you, but I just don't care about what you're saying. How can we get them moving? Create an emotional connection. And so again, I remind you, different reactions. And these are some of the things I'm going to talk about to patterns to create emotional connection. All right, so when we create an elevator pitch, which is a short pitch that we could give in an elevator or anywhere when you catch somebody quickly, we often talk about the what. Knowledge management, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And if we do it, we're going to get this kind of outcome, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And that's what Edward and Allison did. Good start. But we got to add an emotional component to it. In your pitch, when you're giving somebody a short pitch on knowledge management, include the why. The expected outcome is the future, what you hope to gain. The why is the problem we have now that creates the need for knowledge management. That is the wake-up call. That gets people to go, oh no, I didn't know we had that problem. They feel it emotionally. So I told that story of that process of Diane and Susan. Oh, we didn't know we had that problem. So 3 things in your pitch. Always the what is knowledge management, what we expect to get, but back it up to the present. What's the problem we have? That's what gets to people and creates an emotional, gets them to care. Just remember that change happens one person at a time. I say that a lot. The idea of organizational change, even though I've used that word many, many times early in my career, right now that term drives me crazy because we don't really change organizations. It's the people in the organizations. That's what we need to be thinking of, that context. And that's the personal touch pattern. There's a lot of value in this if you get to the right people. Consider what each person values and talk to the people. So we talk about getting early adopters on on board. Those are people who are they're opinion leaders in your organization. There's connectors that know a lot of people. So look for the certain kind of people who can help you and have those personal conversations. Yes, this is a time sucker. It takes a lot of time, but if you can get to the right people and sit down, have a cup of coffee with them, this really will help you in the long run. Personal touch pattern, powerful pattern. The hometown story. So we heard Sean Callahan. I loved his presentation. Telling stories. People get attached to stories emotionally better than a bunch of facts. It helps people connect the dots in the information. So I was trying to explain patterns, and I told the stories of 4 people and the rest of us sitting around. That connects the dots of everything I was trying to say. And people generally enjoy listening to stories more than just a bunch of facts. They'll remember what you said, more likely, and they'll also be able to repeat it later. Hey, I heard this story. And they feel it. So Sean talked about some ways to tell stories. Here's what I do. I list the points I want to make. And then I define the main message I want to make. And then I tell the story. I make up a story. It could be a real story, or it might be a story that I just made up, which I'm clear to tell people. This is just a made up story, but it connects the dots. So people feel stories more than they feel just a collection of facts. They're emotionally connected to it. And it accentuates the positive. I do remember that early in my career when I was doing a presentation on patterns in an organization that I was working in, I had these great PowerPoint slides. And people were politely listening. And then at the end, this guy, Dave, got up. Come on up, Dave, and tell your story of using patterns. And he leaned up against the table in his dirty tennis shoes. Dave always wore dirty tennis shoes. And he said, yeah, I've used patterns, and this is how I've used it. And I could see everybody leaning in, and they're asking all these questions of Dave. And I'm going, hey, I was the one that did all this work with the presentation, but people were connecting with Dave. He was telling the story and accentuating the positive. When people ask me, what is your favorite pattern? I say the Imagine That pattern. You can guide people in creating their own stories. So this is actually a picture from our book, where first of all, you get everybody around and you discuss the present. What are some of the issues we're having in this certain domain? People just talking it up, warm them up, get some food. That's another pattern, do food. Get some food, they're chatting. And eventually these problems start bubbling up. And then you say, how would things look if we captured and shared knowledge? How would things look if we did that? Well, maybe we could do this, and maybe we could do that. So what they end up doing is they're listening with their imagination rather than just their ears. They're creating their own wake-up call, and they're imagining things. So Imagine That pattern, I've seen it done many times. It's extremely powerful for getting people to be emotionally attached to an idea. Wake up call, my favorite pattern. Imagine That, my favorite pattern. Wake up call too. What about the skeptics? There's a pattern called fear less. Here's the deal. When you have skeptics and you try to talk to them with facts, you're giving your facts, they're giving your facts, and you see what my hands are doing? You're just doing this back and forth. And you fear them because they don't agree with you. And they fear you because you're trying to do something they don't like. How can we create less fear? Just discuss with them. So you don't like this. Tell me why. And be ready to listen. And so this uncovers their concerns and fears. And one person told me, you know what? When they did this with me, it didn't make it as much fun to be able to always bash that idea. They're listening to me. So I backed off a lot, but also I love it that they're listening to me and they're learning from me. You can also do another pattern called champion skeptic and designate somebody to always, perhaps at the end of a meeting, say, okay, what did we miss? What is it that you're still bothered with? The point is, and this picture shows, that skeptics also have a part of the story, a part of the process that you may be missing, because you're all excited about knowledge management and you see all the positives. They see the negatives. Bring them on board. Listen to them. It's not always fun, but it's valuable. Last pattern. Change by definition involves gain and loss. Any change you make in life, you gain things and lose things. Even coming today, you made a change from what you were doing and sat down and came here. You're gaining something, hopefully, but you're losing what you could have been doing. In a change, recognize what people are losing. That's called the shoulder to cry on pattern. Look, John, I recognize that if we do this, you are going to have to take some time to learn this. And I know that's going to take extra time on your part. And I recognize that. Look, Sally, I recognize that the knowledge you had before is not going to be as, we need to update it. And that might make you feel like we don't need you, but we do. We're starting something new and we want you on board. So at least recognize it. You can't say, okay, I know you're sad about this, we're not doing it. That's not what I'm saying. Just recognize what they are losing. So often we don't do this. And it really emotionally connects you to the person. And they recognize that you see them as a person who's going through this change and it's difficult. So this is, I'm going to try to pull together what I've done so far here. But this is a picture that I took when I was sitting at the beach. And I was looking at the pretty sunset, but there were some electrical wires, and as the sun was setting, these birds slowly but surely over a period of about 45 minutes joined this. It's like they were watching the sunset. They came to the wire. Birds on the wire slowly joined the wire. They weren't there to begin with. 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 9. Slowly but surely, there's what you need to think about these tactics are good for. Bringing people on slowly but surely, bottom up. Anybody can do this. I'm here to tell you because we interviewed people of all ages, including very young people. So we're going to go back to Allison and Edward. So they were talking, they had their elevator pitch. We saw that on a previous slide. They learned to add a wake-up call. Why do we need knowledge management? What's the problem that we're trying to solve with knowledge management? They added a personal touch. They identified people that they needed to go to personally and try to convince so that they could bring those people on their side and work with them. They accentuated the positive with hometown stories, told a lot of stories to try to get people to understand knowledge management, not just with bullet points, but with stories that brought the bullet points together. They used an Imagine That session. Well, here's the problems we have now. What if we brought in knowledge management? What would that do? Bring people together to talk about that. They addressed the skeptics. So, you don't like this. What don't you like? We want to learn from you. Identifying maybe 1 or 2 champion skeptics. They did a shoulder to cry on for the people that were not liking this. We understand what you're losing. We understand that. We want to help you. They asked for help. And eventually they started creating this group identity. which in the sense is the birds on the wire, slowly but surely. So that's just some of the patterns. There's a lot more. The Fearless Change Patterns website has summaries of them, just small summaries that you can see. But the second question, remember I asked in that big question mark, was how can you use this knowledge, these patterns, to solve real problems? Remember that was the second part. So we developed a method that was started actually by a woman named Deb Bruce, and she was in Canada at the time. She used the Fearless Change Patterns, and she started putting them into a method that she called the Fearless Journey. And so it's been used for years by a variety of people, and right now we call it the Fearless Change Game. It's not really a game, nobody wins anything, but a game is a sort of a simulation. You use the patterns from where you are to where you want to be. Here's a method you can do that. So we put the patterns, which are a lot of description. Each pattern has at least 2 or 3 pages of description. We put them on cards, short descriptions. And here's people that are playing the Fearless Change Game. Deb originally called it Fearless Journey. We now call it the Fearless Change Game. Notice the paper bag. I'll talk about that in a minute. There's a large group of people playing it, and there's a small group of people playing it. You can do this in all kinds of groups. So this is the bridge from knowledge management strategies to business impact. When you do this iteratively, so you have a Fearless Change Game session, and then you have another one, and then you go and do something. You come back and have another session, go back and do some, come back a month later. So it's an iterative process. And you can do this with your patterns too, should you choose to put them together. So you take a fearless journey with the Fearless Change Game by doing this. You're in a table. At one end of the table is the current state. This is where we are now, in whatever your change you want to make. This is where we are now. The end state, or your evolving vision, this is where we want to be. So you put that at 2 ends of the table on sticky notes. And then you identify the challenges that you have along the way and use the patterns to address those challenges. That's the basic way to play it. There's instructions on the Fearless Change Patterns website. People have been doing this all over the world. I always get emails about it, and they change it up a bit, and it evolves. And the important thing is it gets people to sit down and talk about the change you're trying to make. So here's a picture. So you put the challenges in the bag. See that bag there? And then you pull them out one by one. And here's people working in a long table, because current state, end state, they found this long table to work on. But you can work on a round table too. So it helps you get unstuck. This is what I've seen when I observe this. So here's some people who are starting the process. And then there's them at the end. They're all very happy because what they have is a collection of things that they need to do now. They were able to get unstuck. So that's what it gets you, your next steps.
Mary,
yes?
There's a question, but please finish the sentence, and then I want to add something and to ask a question in the name of someone here.
All right, feel free to ask the question. The thing I was going to say is you move from planning to reality. And the question is?
The question is, and then I want to add something, is how can the Fearless Change Game work when people are meeting remote, virtually?
Yes, so thanks for that question. I've seen it done many times where people just type in the pattern strategies in Miro and move them around. Now, I've seen it, and it's much more quiet than being in a room, right? Being in a room, you talk. I've seen it online, and it's people are moving these things, but they can still talk. And it works really well on Miro, not as well as in person, but I've seen it many times. And was there another
Wonderful.
question?
No, I just want to add two things. First of all, when I use Miro A, I sometimes put music so people don't feel so quiet.
Yeah.
And B, we put them in breakout rooms so they discuss in small teams and work together. But what I wanted to add that I wasn't aware of this journey or this game, and we in our company, in my company, we use a similar tool. However, we fragment it. We look at the different audiences, and for each one of them, we define the desired state, the objective. We call it the
Mm-hmm.
objective, and
Mm-hmm.
then we ask ourselves, why wouldn't it work? Why, if we close our eyes and just go straight forward, it won't be easy enough to work? And there we get the more big nuts, the challenging nuts. And then we see, why won't it work? And then we ask ourselves, okay, what tactics should we use for this team, for this group, for this audience, so that it will work? And then we build the action plan for the journey. And then we just, before we really finish it, finalize it, we ask ourselves again, if we make this change, if we use this tactic, will it overcome the barrier? And if so, we have a good chance of moving forward.
So sounds like a variation of the fearless change game. It's basically, I'm just telling you the basics of it, but I love that. And the challenge, the interesting thing about the challenges you mentioned, one person told me, I was recently in Germany doing this fearless change game. And one person said, yes, we do the fearless change game back at our organization. And sometimes the biggest part of it is just identifying the challenges. That is, we get them in the open because a lot of people are thinking about them, but they don't want to say anything, and getting them all in a room, and they put the challenges in this bag and then pull them out one by one. And people say, wow, somebody else is thinking what I was thinking. And then lay one challenge on the table and then put the patterns on top that will address that challenge. And so it's very similar. It's a variation of it. Look, we have a pattern here. Thank you, Moria. Thank you. Love it. So again, the instructions are on the website, and you can always contact me if you want more information about this, and also more information about patterns. Before I forget to say this, I just saw yesterday that there's the group called the Hillside Group that does a lot with the patterns work, is going to have some free online workshops about how to create patterns. We also have a pattern conference in October every year. So email me and you can get more information about that.
Wonderful. We have 7 minutes to go.
Okay. All right. So I just want to just point out that this is an iterative process. You play the fearless change game, you go off and do something on your list, come back. And that makes the steps a lot easier in the process. So summarizing, perfect timing. Summarizing, we'll have about 5 minutes left for questions. What we did here is we looked at patterns as a method for capturing knowledge in any domain. Again, I'll give my email at the end. Contact me and I'll put you in touch with people who can get you more information about patterns. And that we talked about the fearless change patterns, which capture knowledge in the field of change management or change leadership. How can you use knowledge? Well, you can play this fearless change game, also called the fearless journey. It has a variety of different names. People name it all different things. So there's my email, my website. I ask you to connect with me on LinkedIn because I have different things that I offer free, like in the fall coming up. We have a fearless change campfire.
Just a minute, unmute everyone. And please unmute yourself. Just a minute.
Okay.
We have here a problem. Where are we? Sorry, I don't know what happened here. Mute all.
Yes.
Here we go. Please unmute yourself. Marilyn? please unmute yourself. We cannot hear you yet. Marilyn, you are muted. Marilyn, we cannot hear you.
Yeah, okay, I got
Now
it.
we hear you.
Sorry, I pressed unmute and nothing happened. Sorry. I'm so sorry. So, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, you'll see some of the things we do, such as in the fall, we have a Fearless Change campfire where people sit around and tell stories of change. And so, anyway, you can, there's a variety of different things. I can tell you about the patterns. And if you want to learn more about that, there's some free workshops on how to create patterns. So I'll just open it up I got about 5 minutes for questions.
Any question or comment or idea or something you want to share with us, people, about the patterns that you usually use?
Or any questions about change or any of the patterns?
And I apologize to Kim that hates using music on Miro. You have to choose the correct music and the correct sound.
Yeah,
so that it can help you and not, so that
Yeah.
it helps you and doesn't disturb you. I apologize. And if you don't like it, don't use it.
Maybe a question?
Hi,
Hello,
Vincent.
Marilyn.
Oh,
Yeah,
here,
thank
dear
you.
Vincent.
Vincent
Thank
and
you.
Jana had a question too. We'll start with
Okay.
Vincent and then Jana.
Okay, thank you so much for your great presentation. So your tactics are what we could call proven practices for change management, right? I mean, they are proven tactics for change management. My question is, in your fearless change game, who are the members that you involve? Because at which level, and how do you select them?
Everybody selects who they want to be there. And it's, the variety and diversity is the best thing, because what I've seen is once people get in the room, they start having fun and they start forgetting that there's a hierarchy in their organization. So the more different kinds of people that you can bring into a fearless change game, the better ideas you get and the more buy-in you get, and the more challenges you see. In fact, somebody put in the, how do you convince a CEO of knowledge management? You use the fearless change patterns. These work for convincing CEOs, middle management, 19-year-old interns, 30-year-old people that are just joined the organization. They work for everybody. And so when you want to make the change to knowledge management, that's what these patterns are for. So in the beginning, remember I showed that the models, the ADKAR model and the Kotter model, that shows the process, and then the fearless change patterns show the how you do it. So I hope that answered the question for that, what was in the
The
chat.
what and the how. Wonderful.
Jana, you had a question?
Thank you. You partly answered it because that's where I'm right now. And I'm really happy you did this presentation because it drove home the point for me. I like the bird on the wire because that's what we noticed. Our pattern was one person starts it and then the rest follows. So I wanted to join that campfire for the fall. I think we have 4 other cohorts who would be very interested to join as well. And we would love to translate that into the science world, because science can be pretty straightforward sometimes. But we really would love to infuse some fun into our change management and KM, knowledge management exercises. Thank you.
Well, Jana, please email me and I will get you specific information about the campfire. We haven't set a date yet. It's always well attended. Lots of people come from all over the world to tell stories of change management, making changes. So please email me, all right? And
Thank you.
Okay.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. Alexander, did you have a question? It looked like.
Yes, please. In the presentation you have made, you try to inform us how to engage people, making sharing knowledge. But how do you engage CEOs to go into knowledge management? Because it's the first step. If the CEOs are not engaged to KM, people will never engage into CS. So how do you convince them?
Well, remember, CEOs are people too. And so you can use all these patterns with the CEOs. We have one specific pattern called tailor-made that I didn't mention today. And tailor-made is about, it kind of fits with the personal touch. It's about looking what the CEO values and speaking to that. So that's what a lot of people don't do. And often what the CEO values is something for the organization. Whereas other employees are looking at, what do I value personally? What is it about me? Where the CEO is looking more at what the organization values. So check out that tailor-made pattern. That's a big help. But remember, all these patterns, including inviting as a CEO to the Fearless Change game, all of these can apply to whether you're a CEO or a 19-year-old intern. It works for trying to persuade humans. But check out the tailor-made pattern specifically. There's also one called Whisper in the General's Ear. That's another one you may want to check out that's worked well. Again, all these patterns didn't come from Linda and me. They came from stories that we heard, and we put the stories together and grabbed out the tactics. Just like that example I gave with the you do you pattern in the beginning.
Okay, thanks. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Mary Lynn. We are out of time. We learned a lot. And I want to share with everyone that Fearless Change has something like 50, 60 patterns. And the More Fearless Change is an extension of it. And it has 73 or 74 tactics that can be used on the how. So go buy the book, go to the workshops, and even consult Mary Lynn if that can help you. Thank you very much. And next week we have a case study on the topic of change management.
Great.
From one of our Mike Award winners.
Yes, feel free to contact me. You saw my email on the slide, and these PowerPoint slides will be available. Contact me anytime.
We have them on the PowerPoint. They will be also on the PowerPoint slide, and I will send them out later on today.
Okay.
Thank you
all. Right.
All.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.